Well, hello and good evening. Welcome to Wednesday evening. How is everyone? It is good to see you. It is good to be seen by you. I, of course, am Bill Sylvie, aka the Dungeon Delver. Welcome to another show. We're going to have co-host Kyle Schuant joining us here shortly. And that's going to be a lot of fun because we haven't seen Kyle in a while. And I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to talking to Kyle and finding out what's going on in his world. Speaking of people, there he is. He's popping in the green room now. Speaking of people that we are going to be talking to, tomorrow night, Paul Stormberg will be here, and I'm excited about that. Paul is a walking encyclopedia of Dungeons and Dragons history. So be here, bring your questions. Somebody already asked me over on Twitter. They were pointing out an error in the jousting matrix in the chainmail rules, and asked if I knew what it was and what the fix for it was. And I said no, but I bet you Paul knows. Clark Witten, greetings. Just a couple of quick announcements, and then we'll bring Kyle on. First of all, guess what? If you missed it, Dungeon Minister has finished the merch, and we have a link. We have a link for Guac 2 merch. And I'm going to share that with you guys real quick here. So go here to where I'm about to send this link. It's right there in the chat. Go there and get yourself some Guac 2 merch. And guess what? I am made to understand they still have Guac 1 pint glasses, which I would hold mine up to show you, but it's being washed right now. So that's awesome news. And the other thing is, probably later tonight after the show, I have a very short update video on the ongoing Pinkerton situation. More informative than shocking headline breaking news. But anyway, that's enough of that. Let's go ahead. Kyle has left the building. I was literally about to bring Kyle on, and I was like, hey, and he has stepped away. So, oh, here he comes. Must have been adjusting something, audio, video wise. But enough about me. Let's talk about Kyle. Now, if you're newish to the show, of course, once a week, Kyle comes on and co-hosts, and we hold forth on important RPG matters of the day. So, welcome back after your long hiatus, Kyle Schuant, everybody. Kyle, how the hell are you, my friend?
Good evening, boys and girls. I am well.
Excellent.
After a couple of weeks out in the wilderness. Not in the wilderness, but with children. Same thing. They're like little goblins. So.
Yes.
So for those who don't know, I've got a couple of kids, and basically, so I just stream in the term times when they're off at school, like now, and then during the school holidays, it gets a bit much because my wife works from home too, so that would be a bit rough on her to have her have to wrangle the kids for an hour or so while I'm in here streaming, and they'd run in and out and make comments or whatever. Well, the older one would probably go away when I told him to, but the younger one tends to come in. Papa, I want to exercise, and then she jumps on the barbells and stuff. And treats them like the monkey bars at school. So yeah, there wouldn't be much role-playing game talk. There'd be an awful lot of other nonsense. So easier just take a couple of weeks off, and then you'll miss me for a bit instead of getting sick of me.
It builds up the anticipation.
That's right. I once went to a Rocky Horror Picture Show live one where he sings out that line, some song, and he's like, the Antissa, and a bloke in the audience calls out, "Patient!" And he says, "Do you always shoot off too early, darling?" And benefits of a live show.
Oh, that is good. That is good. There were like, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I wasn't saying anything.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, when I was in high school, which seemed to be the prime time for that in the 80s, there were three crowds that went to the midnight movies at the AMC theater. There were the Rocky Horror Picture Show types, your theater kids. There were the stoners that went to see The Wall, which would also run at midnight. And then there were the nerds and the punks that would go to see heavy metal. So, the three midnight movies. I always went to The Wall or to heavy metal. I never went to Rocky Horror Picture. So while I have seen the movie, I have never done the experience. Yeah. I have not. I have not done the time warp, not even once. I couldn't tell you how to do it again.
Well, we had, I don't think there was a wall thing, but there were particular cinemas that showed Rocky Horror Picture Show, and then there was another one that did Blues Brothers, and it was like every Friday night for like 20 years straight. And the fans would go all dressed up appropriate for that particular show. And they had their rituals. So there's parts of parts of Blues Brothers where you throw toilet paper rolls around, just as there's parts of Rocky Horror Picture Show where you do the time warp and all the rest. So it's a whole ritual.
That is wild. I really, really, really like the Blues Brothers a lot. Colleen likes it as much as I do, squared. But I had never heard that there was a Blues Brothers movie scene like that. I gotta tell her that when she'll be fascinated by that. That is awesome. So Kyle, are you signed up for Guac 2?
Not as yet. I haven't looked to see what's available.
Okay.
What's going on?
Plenty of slots available, and you can supplement your mug.
Yeah, get a second mug.
Yes.
I should have brought that along today, but yeah. I've got the mug from the last one, even though I didn't participate, but
well, that's okay. You were there in spirit, and I hope you're there as in body as you can be over the internet tonight. So at the con, not tonight, but no, the con's not starting tonight, people. I had a senior moment. But anyway, so I hope you will run something. I hope you'll all sign up and run something. We had somebody famous join. I was amazed by this, and I hope this is. I mean, I realize it's not the actual person, but who was this here? Somebody signed up under the name. I gotta see here. Howard Hughes.
Is he going to show up to the con with Kleenex boxes on his feet?
I don't know. But if you, Howard, if you're out there, please don't demo the shut in on top of a Vegas hotel, the RPG. That's all I ask. That
sounds like a Swedish LARP. For those who don't know, there was a Swedish LARP where they actually locked themselves in an actual like Cold War era fallout shelter and role played that the nukes had dropped, and they just sat there for the whole weekend going, oh, the angst, 1 billion people have died or something. I don't know what the fuck they did all weekend, but that was their weekend. It was a Scandinavian LARP.
Yeah, that's
not as depressing as another one they published. Wasn't it Finnish or something called "We All Had Names"? And you sit around in a circle and you your role play being Jewish people in occupied Europe hiding from the Nazis, and basically one by one you're all captured by the Nazis and taken off to a death camp or something. And so, like, everyone's going to die. It's worse than the worst dungeon because everyone's going to die. But yeah, you just that's the game. It's a tabletop game. I'm not sure what yours. But at least you're not LARPing it. You know, it's Eiffel is a Nazi. I don't see the appeal of that. But yeah, But as you said, we shouldn't LARP being on top of a tower, OCD.
Yeah. Justin says they should have gone into a bunker for a weekend and TTRPG a post-apoc game using the place you're playing in as ambience. I mean, I can see like ambience. There are people who have more money and more space to game in than I do here. I mean, this is mostly Delver TV Central, 99.99% of it anymore. But if I had more space, I'd get the LED torch sconces, not scones, those are biscuits, torch sconces and some faux wood beams and stuff around like that to add some ambiance. But I wouldn't insist when people come in, it's like you are entering the Dark Ages, my friend, you must speak Middle English and use any modern.
I've heard of people like gaming by candlelight because that's all you would have had in D&D. But then they were looking at the books like this. Yeah. And eventually gave up and turned the lights on.
The first time I played Call of Cthulhu back in 89 or 90, we did it by candlelight for ambience for about 45 minutes. And then we just gave it because it was flashlights. One guy was now this is 89, so there was no mobile phone flash, but one guy was literally using a photo flash, like he cranked it up to like a 2-second at max. So I'm sitting over there and this pop, and then I hear the bwee as it would start to charge back up as he was trying to read his Call of Cthulhu character sheet. And we finally gave up. We finally gave up trying to do that and just went with like the kitchen light and the hall light were enough to spill into the room we were gaming and make it dim, but not like, that was craziness. That was absolutely
no. The only ambience I really believe in is the food. There's been more than one D&D game where I made like roast beef or made a vegetable soup with barley bread, that sort of thing. Food makes good ambience.
Yes, it does. Because Kyle, we have the the order of importance.
People, snacks, setting, and system comes dead last. Which is good because so many systems like this one are so awful. So fortunately, the system's least important.
Yes. And Justin agrees with us. That is very correct. You could get something from the prize box at the end of class, Justin, or take a gold star home with you. But yeah, no. The whole experience of sitting down and hanging out with your friends, I mean, it's a sense of fellowship. It's a sense of togetherness. And the first communal things we did, if you go all the way back and you approach things from more of an evolutionary standpoint, or even if not, it's biblical. The first communal things we did was gather together to eat. Sitting there.
Well, I mean, even today, I mean, I'm a long way out of the dating market, but you don't ask a woman to let's go out and stand in the street and talk. You at least have a coffee, if nothing else. Preferably dinner. It might be dinner and a movie, but at some point you will consume something. Yeah, you don't just stand in the street and talk.
Yeah. You know.
Which, in principle, if all it was a matter of getting to know one another and communicating, that's all you'd need to do. But food and drink help. They put people at their ease. You get the insulin rush from a full belly and makes you feel more relaxed. You're more comfortable in their presence and all that. So, yeah.
Of course, they're not completely compatible. I mean, if you have a nice collection of classic RPG books, you can pick out the coffee spills, the soda stains, the pizza grease stains, and all that.
Gives it character.
Yes. Luther Pendragon says, "I'm all or nothing. If I can't have Marvel columns with scantily clad slave girls chained to them, it's just not ambiency enough." Well, that is up to your individual dungeon master.
I think it was last time I was on when we had the Dungeoneer book. That was the attempt to take the fighting fantasy solo books and turn them into a more general role-playing game. And they suggested having props. And then in one, in the scenario they have in there, you're rescuing the princess. And they said, if you can get a beautiful 16-year-old blonde girl to be a prop at your table, great. But get her permission before tying her up, they said. This was written in the early 80s, so... Yeah,
a different time.
It was a very different time in many ways. There was a little video circulating around on Twitter the other day of an ad in Australia in the late 1970s. There was a brand of pantyhose called Sexy Legs. And the ads basically consist of the woman walking along and her dress falls off. And she's standing there in her underwear with the pantyhose on, and a bunch of men leer at her and go, "Oh, sexy legs," including memorably one of them's a priest, Catholic priest, leering at her. And it became a little game to pick out. Like there was a guy who was later went on to star in the TV show Neighbours, long-term soap opera that we have in Australia. Went off to the UK. I don't know if it made its way to the US as well.
Never.
But yeah, it's our equivalent of The Bold and the Beautiful or whatever, just been going on for ridiculous number of decades. I mean, they might have cancelled it recently. I don't know. But anyway, that guy was in the background, probably 18 years old then or something, and he's going, with a lascivious leer. It's a very different time back then.
Yeah. There's a lot of those commercials where it's appropriately enough for the channel, because for those of you who don't know, we do talk about role-playing game topics here periodically. There was a televised ad for Dungeons and Dragons that's got like 4 of the 5 people at the table later went on to be like big Hollywood stars. I'll have to look that one up. And we'll see. Let's see. You know what? Let's see if I can find that famous people in D&D ad. All right, let's see what we've got. No, that's not.
Oh, yeah. I think I know the one you mean, yeah.
D&D commercial. Let's try that. Alan Ruck is in it. No, not Alan Ruck.
Jamie Gertz was in it too, wasn't she?
Jamie Gertz, yes. Jamie Gertz is in it. All right, so let's see. Yes, it was Alan Ruck. So here. I'll share this link, but this is. Let me see if I can find it here. Jamie Gertz and Alan Ruck, and here is the ad. I will copy the image address, and you guys can check this out. I believe that is it, Mad RR. That's kind of a long URL, but you guys can check that out. It's from oldschoolfrp.tumblr.com if you want to check that. So you got what's the paragraph say here? The adventure is yours. Ad for 1981 Mold Basic D&D. The Keep on the Borderlands is the same group as in the 1981 TV ad, but in different clothes, which means that's Alan Ruck in green next to Jamie Gertz in red. So there you go.
I was doing a Google search similar to yours, and I came across a number of different images about D&D, obviously. I came across this one, and I thought, D&D advertising has surely changed. Like, what the fuck is this? It's like a couple's travel photo on Instagram.
It is. It really, really is. I mean,
like, what are they going to Ibiza or something? It's like, yeah, like, what is this with the big grin? And where's the signs of their having been on the road? Where's the stubble? Where's the dirt? It's like, what? What is this? What's
and what I mean,
like adventurers.
That's kind of the thing. Let me share this one over here with you guys. Knock yours out for a second there, Kyle. That's what D&D ads need to be, and it's what I have been saying over and over and over again, is that to be a proper presentation of D&D to media, you have to show people enjoying the thing, right? I mean, when McDonald's puts out an ad, okay? McDonald's puts out an ad, and they don't show people just walking around saying, man, that was good McDonald's food we ate. Yes, indeed, that was good McDonald's food. We ate some delicious McDonald's food, didn't we, Kyle? They show people sitting down together to enjoy it. Now we can argue the merits of McDonald's food, but the fact is they show people enjoying it. If you want to get someone to do something, show people enjoying the thing. It's such an effective method of advertising, in fact, that the government, at least here in the United States, doesn't let you show people drinking beer or other alcoholic beverages. Because they don't want to picture somebody drinking a cold and going, that is some good Coors. That is delicious wine. You can have it on screen, but you can't show it like going up to their lips, then cut away, and then, sits down and the glass is half empty later. Nothing like that.
Yeah, we've got the same regulations here. Right? It's recently been a surprise because more advertising has appeared on YouTube and that, and we got the old style alcohol ads, with the guy like working hard, mowing his lawn or something, and then knocking back the beer, going yeah. It's been a shock to see that again. Next, we'll be seeing cigarette ads on YouTube as well.
Right. Although I will say that there was a beer company that in the 1950s skirted the law, and this is a very funny case. The commercial was framed as such that you were just catching like the last few seconds of a segment of a talk show. And the talk show host, which I could be wrong, but I think it was played by comedian Stan Freberg, but he says, all right, folks, on our next segment, we'll be talking to Dr. John Smith from the Newark Zoo, who has brought his trained gorilla Bonzo with him tonight. Then we've got Mike Jones from Blatt's Brewery. They brought some of their beer to show us tonight, and so they do the cutaway, and the three humans are talking, and then a guy in a gorilla suit is the trained gorilla. Well, he picks up the glass of beer and drinks the entire beer and is like rubbing his tummy and everything. So they got away with it once, and then the law was very quickly amended to say nobody, not just a person, nobody or nothing can drink the beer on screen.
I love that. There's a tradie. What's your US contractor? I don't know if he was a carpenter or a mechanic or whatever the hell he was. But anyway, he so obviously, you have your income tax and you have your deductions, and you can claim certain things as deductions as the normal cost of doing business. So for you've got to drive your ute around, and you can charge for your ute and your the petrol for it and all the rest, and the tools and so on. Anyway, this guy claimed his dog on tax, because it is pretty traditional for the tradie to have a dog that sits in the back of the ute with his tongue hanging out as he drives along, and keeps him company all day on the big work sites and all the rest. Throws it half of his meat pie when he's when he's had enough. And, anyway, he claimed his dog on tax, the cost of his dog, and the grooming for the dog and all the rest. And the Australian Tax Office turned him down, said, no, you can't claim the cost of your dog for God's sakes. So he took it all the way to the High Court, and the High Court said there's nothing in the legislation, and because he claimed it was a cost of doing business. And the ATO is like, what? How? He's like, well, he guards my tools. On the work site, somebody might come and steal all my tools. And he guards them. He stops people nicking off with them. And the High Court said that was quite reasonable under the legislation. So, of course, then the government straight away changed the legislation. So one tradie ruined it for everyone else.
You jerk. So somebody was saying this, was it north of the Rockies? I don't know, north of the Rockies. I remember those vintage paperbacks that would have the heavy cardstock color inserts of cigarette ads in them. I hated those. But somebody was saying, Kevin Oliphant, the Marvel Comics ads. And so I pulled those up here. Let me once again share screen and click share screen 7 times to get it to work. Share. Ain't technology great? Add to stream. So this is what he's talking about, and I'll share this link. If you've never seen these are actually great. They're drawn by Bill Willingham. I don't know who might have done the writing, but Bill Willingham, who was working for TSR at the time, he's still active in comics today, I believe, did the art for these. And this is an entire mini campaign that functions as a comic book and an ad. And you've got named characters in it, and D&D monsters and so on and etc. Green slime, don't touch it, it is certain death, as the magic user sitting out there holding his hand to lick under the drips. And the art did get better as time went on, but you can check those out. These are these are great little ads. So this doesn't do the whole, well, we'll show people playing D&D, but they're good fun nonetheless. And these are fair to middle and scans, but these are pretty good. So you guys might check those out if you've never seen them. But I feel like that goes back to what I said about the D&D movie, and you haven't seen it yet, have you, Kyle? Honor Among Thieves? Yeah. Regardless, I don't care if, I
don't care if you spoil it for me.
No, that's I haven't seen.
It's going to be ironic, and the male characters will be useless. I know that.
But And you know what? I'll even retroactively apply this to Gary's idea for a D&D movie. A D&D movie that does not frame the movie in the context of people playing D&D fails on a grading system from A to F. F being a failure, A being perfect. It's like a B minus at best.
Yeah.
You have got to give people something to hook into. You've got to say, look, this is ultimately about grognards and nerds sitting down, eating Cheetos, drinking soda or beer or coffee, whatever their libation is, and pretending to be an elf for a couple of hours. That, I've said it before. What could have redeemed the 2000 Dungeons and Dragons movie is if at the end, I have a vague recollection of the way it ends, but smash cut to all the actors sitting around the dining room table with Jeremy Irons playing the person who was their DM, and everybody kind of throwing up their hands and going, "Oh my God, that was I can't believe you did that to us, dude!" And him laughing, and somebody getting up to get a sandwich or something like that, and them talking about next week, or they're going to take a break for a few minutes and then come back to it, and then kind of pull back away from the house and that sort of thing, and
well,
show
now you're talking about the two movies, Gamers and Gamers 2, Darkness Rising.
Yes, Gamers and Gamers 2. Although they kind of have a little bit of fun with the whole, breaking the fourth wall and so on. I don't want to spoil it. You can watch it on YouTube, guys. It's worth your time to check out.
It is. Well, they definitely break the fourth wall in the first one, but in the second one, it's like they reach the end of the dungeon and they all get killed, and it's like, "No," says one of the players, "I will not be defeated. We have to run it again." And they run it again, and they take on a new player who encourages them to, plan and work as a team rather than trying to individually optimize their characters and stuff, but just to work together and and explore things a bit. And they have a good joke about the uselessness of bards.
Robert
bard
Phillips
keeps getting killed.
Yeah. So there you go. Stranger Things got it right. To, show people playing and enjoying D&D.
And when you do write rules, I think the rules have to be evocative and simple. I recently started playing State of Decay 2, which is another zombie survival game, and you build your little compound, build it up, and you can circulate through the characters in the compound. So when one gets wounded or tired or whatever, you put the other one back, and it's like old D&D play, except you're building a stronghold. You circulate through your various characters. But one thing I like about the way they present the game is they've got a bit more complexity in the game compared to State of Decay 1 or a lot of first-person shooters and that. But how they present it, so there's how to play the game, and there's, I think, 12 different topics. And then I'll get a screenshot next time we're doing it. I was going to do it, but I forgot. But there's about 12 different topics. And then when you click on each one, it comes up with 3 panels. And the panel just sort of has an evocative picture of, like it's talking about shooting. So it shows somebody shooting and then somebody else getting shot or whatever. And then there's 1 to 1.5 lines. There's like at most a 25-word sentence underneath each one. And then you click at the bottom to say, okay, or cool, or wow, or whatever in response to that. But it's all explained very simply and with evocative art. Now, in a game book, you can use more text than art if you want, but it's the same kind of thing. It needs to be evocative. And that's what the game examples and so on are. I could show you what the game itself looks like. As I said, unfortunately, I didn't do a screen cap of the rules explanations.
Okay.
But that's what they have for describing the characters. So when you start, they start you off with a pair of characters. There's several pairs that you can go through. but that's one of them. And they show you their stats: cardio, wits, fighting, shooting. Everyone's got that, but someone might have a fifth one: mechanics. And then they've got individual traits, like one is nosy, and a cancer survivor, and the other one is a furniture adjuster, love to dance, and a paintballer. So, yeah, in the background. Months after the apocalypse, you reunited with your estranged brother. Since then, the two of you have stayed one step ahead of the zombies and starvation, but now supplies are running low. Luckily, your brother learned of an army-run refugee camp where you hope to find food and shelter, as long as you remember to share, like Mama taught you. So, that's as much background as you need to start a game, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
That's as much as you need. And then the stats, like 4 stats and that. So I think that's the way to do it. More role-playing games need to do that sort of thing. I was telling Bill about this. I picked this up a while ago, but I hadn't had a look at it, and I looked at it the other day. So the End of the World, Revolt of the Machines. They've got 4 of these in the End of the World series. One is so this is basically your Terminator type one. There's one zombie one, there's one alien invasion one, and then there's one Wrath of the Gods or something. I don't know, I don't know what the hell it is, but I didn't look at it. But anyway, they all use the same system, and it's a system that they've got lined up. They got themselves the Walking Dead franchise or license or whatever you call it. They've got that lined up to use that system, which they say they're going to flesh out. I don't know. But this is an example of a system where you know what they're trying to do, but it's more complicated than it needs to be. So let me just find a screen cap.
Okay.
What do they call the End of the World on the Machines character sheet? It's too bloody small. Okay. All right, so let me add this. All right, so this is their character sheet, right? So you got your physical, mental, social, dexterity, vitality, logic, willpower, charisma, and empathy. Okay, basically the same 6 stats that D&D gave us 50 years ago.
Mm.
Okay, so those are the same stats, but they're rated 1 to 5. In the base game, you play yourself, and they've got this strange system where you assign the stats, and then the rest of the players anonymously vote on whether they think you've got it right or wrong. And if more of them vote that you got it right, then it goes up. No, actually you're stronger than that, mate. And more of them vote down, then no, actually you're weaker than that. But then they also include, but you don't have to play yourself. You can play some other character. I would recommend playing some other character. It's too damaging to the ego. And then you feel especially bad when your character dies. Where's my dice? So the system. You need at least 2 differently colored dice, because what happens is, okay, your base thing, you got a dexterity check. You want to ride your motorcycle. You don't have stats. You have, they call them features, but I'll get into them in a minute. So you want to ride your motorcycle and leap over a ramp, over a truck while you're escaping from the Terminator, for example. Say your dexterity is 3, you roll 1d6, and if you roll 3 or under, you succeed. You get a success. If you roll above 3, you fail to do that. Something goes wrong. Okay, so that's the most basic thing. But you also have a negative die that you can apply to that. So if you say, okay, I'm going to ride my motorcycle, but I'm going to go really fast. I want to do an extra big jump. I'm going to really gun the engine. The GM says, okay, you get a negative die and you roll that at the same time. Now, what happens then is, say the roll is, say your dexterity is 3, you need a 2, 1, 2, or 3 to succeed. Okay.
Okay.
If you get that, great, you've got a success. If the second die, the negative die, is a matched number, so you roll a 2 on your positive die, and you get a 1, 3, 4, or 5, or 6 on your negative die, doesn't matter. But if you get a 2 on your negative die, it's matched, and it cancels out the success. Okay, so if you have a negative thing like being injured or pushing it, or if there's some trait, I'm one-legged while I'm trying to ride a motorcycle or whatever, then yeah, that adds to the negative thing. The odd thing here is that even though, okay, as your stat is bigger, you've got a greater chance of success. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you've got a greater chance of rolling under that number on a D6. That also means you've got a greater chance of a matched number, because if you've only got 1 chance in 6 of success, you also only have 1 chance in 6 of having the number matched and having that success taken away when you've got a negative. And if you've got 2 chances in success, in 6 of success, you also have 2 chances in 6 of it matching, and therefore failing, and so on. So the better you get, the more likely you are to fuck up if you push it a bit or you're injured. So that's a bit odd. But yeah, so the positive ones can stack up. Oh, it's a really good motorcycle, or you've got a, and this is where the features come in. So if your feature is a motorcycle rider, you now have a positive die and you can roll 2 positive dice, and so on. So you get what they're trying to do, but it's an overly complicated way of doing it. You know what I mean? Because, so they got the features, and then it goes on because you've also got the stress. So if you push it, okay, and you failure, then the DM can say, okay, yep, you landed your motorcycle, but you kind of bumped yourself while you're doing it, and so you get what's called a stress level. And this stress level will then be a negative die on everything else you try to do afterwards. And so on. So it's sort of, you get what they're trying to do, but like most kind of Thespy attempts at role-playing games, well, my issue with the Thespy games is that quite often they go for these complex dice systems which actually take you out of the game. Like if you want a Thespy game experience, you want to be pretty immersed in it. And if it takes you 10 minutes to figure out what the fuck just happened, you're not immersed in it anymore. You know what I mean? You're busy looking at the dice rather than thinking about what happened in the game.
Yeah, this is like a really crappy rendition of the. There's a name for the system, but I can't remember what it's called right now. But Tales from the Loop. The core system for Tales from the Loop, it's the same as the core mechanic for Blade Runner, for Free League's Twilight 2000, for Free League's Alien game, and Things from the Flood. This sounds like that, but it's less like their system is you have a stat and you have a skill. The number of points in your stat and the number of points in your skill is the number of 6-sided dice you roll. If you roll any 6 in that handful of dice you roll is a success. And there are things that can add to it. Like you can get an extra dice. Like if your character's like part of their background is say you're doing Tales from the Loop, you're really good on a BMX bike, you know? Oh, well, I'm going to try and escape from the evil scientists on my bike. Oh, okay. Well, add a couple of 6-siders there to your roll. And all you have to do, you know, I might say that it's a normal, you know, because they're on foot. So, you know, just roll. Okay, well, I got a couple of 6s. Awesome. Or, you know, they're in a van and you're on a highway. Okay, well, that's really difficult. So you got to get 2 or maybe even 3 6s. Well, if you fail, you might be stressed out. You know, you might take a condition. It might be a physical thing. It might be a mental thing. But all that means is you just roll 1 less 6-sided dice the next time I tell you to try something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
so
it.
Like
that's
I said, I get what they're trying to do, but it's just an overly complicated way of doing it. Someone said his wife plays that game. Look, I think it's like every other overly complicated game, from GURPS to Rollmaster and so on. If the game master is really familiar with it and keeps things moving, it could work well.
Mm-hmm.
But in that respect, what we're really saying is that the game system has become an obstacle to smooth play rather than helping the play along. So what you're saying is that the game session is working well despite the system, not because of it. In which case, you don't necessarily want that system. You know, it's what made me stop playing GURPS. As I've said before, you know, the friend that took 3 sessions to resolve 18 combat rounds with 6 characters against 8 gargoyles or something, and it was spread over 6 weeks versus me running a game where I had a battle that decided the entire fate of the Roman Republic, and it took 20 minutes. So, because I was ignoring most of the rules, I was just keeping things moving. And I looked at that and went, oh, okay. So I'm having to ignore the game system in order to make it work. Okay. Time to choose another one. I think you probably wouldn't have to ignore this, but if you were really familiar with it, you could make it work smoothly. But yeah, you'd have to take time to get to know it and work with it. You'd probably need a lot of practice and some players who are patient while you're stumbling through it. Like most modern game books, it's got fantastic art. Totally not a rip-off of the Terminator movies and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, no Terminator rip-off there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Screen issues running from that. Yeah. They also suggest nanobots. Oh, look, here's someone else. There's lots of images of humans running from giant robots.
Yeah.
Yeah, advancing characters. Yeah, do I get XP? Yeah. So, and then they've got different campaigns and everything. And there's things like, this is where you get cyberpunk. Even before the Pentagon turns to Paladin defense technologies for aid, the cyborgs know the Gladius combat robots present a potential threat. In addition to their civilian and government missions, the cyborgs launch offensive against Paladin facilities. Of course, Paladin puts its advanced military technology. So, yeah, okay, it's cyberpunk. So, post-apocalyptic cyberpunk. And they've got some artwork that they've obviously just taken from some photographs. I think they've turned some photographs into some artwork.
Yeah.
Which I don't mind, but that's.
Well, I will say this, probably the bottom of the barrel as far as let's take photos and touch them up. I mean, it was the absolute worst. And if I live to be 100 and I hear the explanation from the man himself, I will never understand why in Cyberpunk 2020 version 2 or some rendition of Cyberpunk, Mike Pondsmith literally used G.I. Joe action figures that he posed and photographed and threw like a black and white, the pencil in Microsoft Photo Editor on. I'm not making that up. You guys can actually find that. And people roundly criticized him, and rightly so. Mike, you do such a good job, and you're such a righteous dude. Were you better?
That's so cheesy. That's so cheesy. It's awesome. I love it.
Better to release an RPG with no artwork at all than to do that. That was.
Well, I don't know. What's the man's day job? He might have been short of cash at the time.
Making role-playing games, and he had several.
Was that his? Well, yeah, but was he making any money from them? Because recently we've heard of a game designer who boasts that he sued people while he was on food stamps, and so it shows how much money people make from RPGs.
But I mean, to be fair, and this is as far as this conversation will go and no further. To be fair, to be honest, this is just a rhetorical question. Was his stuff really lighting the gaming world on fire? I mean, was he shifting?
No, of course not. No, we're missing nothing. Missing nothing. But I'm just like, you don't know. I don't know the circumstances of Pondsmith. I hope he made a stack of cash from it because, it's great games, and I've heard him talk, and I love his baritone voice. So I hope he made a stack of cash from it. But I don't know. I mean, because it could just happen that somebody signed a bad deal, or a game is much admired but rarely played, or that they sold the rights to it, and so somebody else made all the money from it. I don't know. He's come back with other versions of Cyberpunk that didn't do that, and none of his other RPGs did that. I get what you're trying to do, Kyle, but no, I'm not. I can't. The G.I. Joe figures are so cheesy. I have to love it.
Mike Pondsmith, by all accounts, is a stellar dude, and I've heard him speak before, and like his inspirations for Cyberpunk. Yes, he watched Blade Runner and Akira, and read all of Gibson's work and the stuff that was coming out from Walter John Williams and so many other authors, and his heart is as big as All Outdoors when it comes to embracing that and the other RPGs does. And by God, I could listen to the man talk about Spawn of Bashan or riffs in the baritone voice of his. And I think there's an alternate universe where the entire of the R&B pop music industry is right in the palm of his hand, because he's set the world on fire with his voice. But
I want to see Mike Pondsmith do a project with Raven McCracken. So,
dude, that's like peanut butter and motor oil. Why? Why would you ruin a delicious snack like that?
Glorious insanity. They'd probably just come up with rifts. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, no, that's the. And I kind of, in retrospect, given now that a lot of authors looking for quickie placeholder art will go to AI art, and we can argue about the merits of using AI art until
G.I. Joe over AI.
You'll take G.I. Joe over AI art. I gotcha. I mean, it may have been a bit prescient of him. Like, I have these pre-existing figures. I can just pose them differently than what they're normally posed and take pictures of them. Trace says, I got to find the art now. Just Google Cyberpunk art G.I. Joe, and you'll probably find some of the images. But that's not a patch itself on Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is a good, solid game. I would make two kind of largish changes, and this is this is where I can't flip my shit at people who say, I will just throw alignment out of D&D, or I have thrown alignment out of D&D. I never use it. I don't think it's a good system. And I always go, but you're tearing one of its core pillars out of the game. Because I do the same thing with Cyberpunk. I don't mess around with humanity cost because I think it's ridiculous. You know, Grandma had to get a hip, and now she's a bit colder and a bit meaner and to want to kill somebody, you know.
Well, everyone's a bit grumpy after surgery.
Pop got a cochlear implant, and
that was it. That was it. He was always a grumpy old bastard, but once he got the cochlear implant, he went cyber psycho.
He went cyber psycho. That just pushed him right over the edge, you know.
It's like Walt in Gran Torino. Walt in Gran Torino gets a hip replacement.
Yeah, he was a perfectly nice auto worker until he had the hip replacement and turned to this vile racist. But no, humanity cost I just can't with. And the other one, the default setting of Night City. If we're talking about games that are contemporary or surrounding contemporary, the best thing you can do for your players is to take the city or the town you grew up in and make that the setting, because you know it like the back of your hand. So if somebody said, hey, will you run a Cyberpunk campaign for us? I would do it at the drop of a hat, and I would set it in a Cyberpunk Orlando. Because if I tell them to go to...
you're going to say a Cyberpunk Gadsden.
I could do a Cyberpunk Gadsden too, you know, automated steel plant out on Alabama Drive. You know, Nakalulu Falls is a private hunting reserve for the megacorp that runs the tire factory and the steel factory there in town. I could totally do that. But the Night City setting, I'm just like, I mean, did you have to Cyberpunk Disney World, absolutely. A dystopia of robots and electronics where your every move is monitored by a megacorp. And then whatever you wanted to do with it in Cyberpunk. Lux says the city I grew up in wouldn't make much of a Cyberpunk. Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, if you're from a wide spot in the road, you know, that's known for being, you know, a Love's truck stop with a Hardee's next to it and a regional medical center in the same strip mall that the mini super Walmart is in a few miles away. Yeah, I can see where you might go, this doesn't exactly capture the feel of Los Angeles 2019 that I want. Of course, but in the overall, if you grew up in an urban area and you want to do a Cyberpunk game,
were there any Cyberpunk supplements where people like go in the wilderness? Like, I'm imagining like a Solo all geared up with the Uzi that pops out of his arm, and he goes off into the Rocky National Park or something.
Now, in Count Zero, there's a subplot with he would be in Cyberpunk terms a solo. He's a mercenary named Turner who excels in corporate extractions. And spoiler alerts for Count Zero. If you guys have never read William Gibson's Count Zero, I'm spoiling a plot thread right here. He goes to his brother for help, and his brother, it is implied, lives in North Georgia, but in the backwoods of North Georgia. So his brother is like a cyberpunk hick. He's got dogs on his property that he's given sensor mods to. Like, he's surgically enhanced the dogs on his property. So they've got like millimeter wave radar and infrared and ultraviolet for tracking. And when they're sitting on the front porch drinking beers,
you turn on the microwave and they start yapping.
Yeah, but they're drinking beers, and he says, "Is that your work?" And he said, Yeah, there's not a raccoon within within like the county limits. Because the dogs, the raccoons can't escape the dogs. But Lux's medical center, strip mall. What are these city slicker inventions? But that's your, that was a rural cyberpunk setting, and unfortunately, we only got a very, very narrow view of it because, of course, the man Turner, he's not there for just a friendly visit. He's actively being chased. And we shift back over to urban landscapes and such. But Gibson actually did an okay job of showing, okay, what is rural America going to look like after the turn of the century, in this case, 2100 and onwards, with highly, like, cities that have basically turned into 40K hive cities with domes over them and the whole nine yards. There's still going to be people living in the backwoods of Alabama and rural Florida and so on and et cetera. And he does touch on those points from time to time, but not enough, unfortunately, to really build up enough. Like if William Gibson revisited the Sprite setting, I would say, please, Mr. Gibson, set it in a small town. We get it that cities are urban hellscapes. Now, how about a small town?
Well, the first Mad Max movie wasn't strictly post-apocalyptic. It was kind of in the process of apocalypse. Fuel gradually becoming more scarce. So perhaps you have like Night City, and then outside is the Mad Maxian desert.
Yeah, so something like that, which is kind of how I haven't played the game yet. It hasn't gotten inexpensive enough and tweaked enough to run on my creaky old 4th gen with a 1080 Ti in it. But that's I understand that's kind of how Cyberpunk 2077 works. Like, you're in downtown Night City and it's chrome and steel and smart guns and everything else, but you can take 20 minutes to drive outside the city and you're literally in trailer parks and, spray painted gang cars and stuff like that. Alan says a cyberpunk setting where players go off the grid, so they're just a bunch of chromed up schmucks sitting in the woods roasting marshmallows and nothing happens.
A lot like the players around the game table.
Yeah.
Except without being chromed up.
Marifatty says anything outside of Atlanta is backwoods in Georgia. That's very, very true. People tend to not realize that. Once you get outside of Atlanta, if you're going south, there's nothing until you get to Orlando, Florida. And if you're going north, it's Knoxville, so it's a little closer. Knoxville, Tennessee. West, you'll hit Gadsden, which is a tiny-ish town, but your next major city is New Orleans. And then east is just the ocean. But you get outside of it's very Skyrim-like, Kyle. It's like, I'll walk a few feet outside of Atlanta, and it's just crickets and banjo music. All right, let me just turn around and go right back in.
Well, I hope at least Atlanta has people talking in bars and that. that always freaks me out in these open world games where you walk into a bar, whether it be a Skyrim bar or a bar that you yourself have built in Fallout, and there's people just standing around with their drinks and nobody says a word. It's so creepy.
Yeah, that was one thing that it always bugged me, and I felt at the time that the technology was there, but I guess it wasn't. Was in Morrowind. My first taste of a truly open world RPG was Morrowind, where it's first person perspective. The models were very high quality for the time. The world was very high quality, and you'd walk into a building and you'd get like one line of spoken dialogue from somebody and everyone else just kind of standing there mute. If you walk up and initiated conversation with them, you might get a paragraph of text on the screen, but it was just dead silent, and it was always kind of eerie. But someone has actually been using the AI voice tool 11 Labs, which I did a couple of prank videos up on the channel with Dagoth the bad guy from Morrowind, if you guys want to check those out. But someone has been going through, and all those boxes of text, they've been snipping out the voice actors' voices, processing them through 11 Labs, and then changing that text to audio. So they are getting like a fully voiced Morrowind working. So if that's your jam, you can seek that mod out.
All right.
But I mean, ultimately, it's still not that many people have dialogue, or if they do, it's very repetitive. Gold box games. Yeah, the gold box games were kind of sandbox games too. Anyway,
Rob wants to know what the best system is to run a Road Warrior game.
The best system to run a Road Warrior game. I think the faster the action, the lighter weight the system you need. You don't want to run Road Warrior with Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, but with guns and armor made out of tires and car parts. I'm tempted to say something like Silhouette System, although I guess there's a couple of other systems that have tried to capture it, like Atomic Highway. But Silhouette Systems just it functions on 2d6. That would be my recommendation, is check out DreamPod 9's Silhouette System. No dice pools involved, unless you two dice a pool. But Metatron says, once ChatGPT gets incorporated into gaming, you won't be able to shut the NPCs up.
But they won't say anything interesting. They'll just meander on for several paragraphs.
So just like real life, for the most part.
But desperately trying not to offend anybody. They'll be very boring NPCs. None of them will have strong opinions on anything.
Maybe. Of course, at the slow crawl that that our friends at Bethesda are undertaking, I don't know that we're going to get. I may be like on life support in the old folks' home before the next Bethsoft game, the next Elder Scrolls game comes out, or I guess they're doing one called Starfield or something like that. That's like the Elder Scrolls, but in space.
Didn't they cancel that or something? I don't know.
No. Starfield is still being worked on. They demoed it not too long ago, and I think so. This gets a little inside baseball, but I always thought that this was kind of hilarious. The engine, when Bethesda was developing Morrowind, they had a 3D engine that was kind of like Quake called the X engine. That they used for their Terminator game. Hey, there we go. We're looping it back in, Kyle. Killer robots, Bethesda, it all comes back together. It was kind of jank, but it also had a few nice features at the time. So they're like, okay, our next Elder Scrolls game, Elder Scrolls 3, is going to use the X engine. And then they were like, for what we're trying to accomplish, it's not really going to work. So they went to a third-party company and they bought an engine called Gamebryo. There was a company that just said, hey, we've come up with a world game. It's got network code, so you can do network battle, deathmatch sort of stuff. And Bethesda liked it, and they licensed it from them and said, okay, we're going to build Morrowind on the Gamebryo engine, which was all well and good in 2000. And then a few years later, after they had done all the expansion packs and DLC, they said, okay, well, we're gonna release the Elder Scrolls Oblivion. And the Elder Scrolls Oblivion was a tweaked and modified and built on Gamebryo engine. And then they released Fallout 3, which was a tweaked and modified Gamebryo engine. And then they released Skyrim, was a tweaked and modified Gamebryo engine. And then they released Fallout 4, which was a tweak. And by this point, they've taken just the stock Ford sedan and have piled so many options on it, it can barely run properly. But the one thing, going all the way back to 1999, when they first started looking at this engine, was the game graphically was not advanced enough to show people climbing ladders. It's why in Skyrim, Morrowind, Oblivion, Fallout 3, Fallout 4, any of the expansions, if you go up to a ladder and that ladder leads to a balcony, the balcony is closed off in its own cell, and you just get to the ladder, you press the use button, you hear a little sound effect, screen fades to black, screen fades back in where you're supposed to be. They don't
a lot of games seem to struggle with that. I think I'm thinking of DayZ, where you climb a ladder and it shows you doing the ladder climbing motions, but the hands never actually intersect with the rungs. They're going like that. So they never touch the rungs. They touch some space near the rungs instead.
Well, it's right on the tip of my tongue. The Far Cry games do it just fine. But so here's the kicker, though. When Bethesda announced, hey, we're going to release this new game, Fallout 76, massively multiplayer online, people were like, great. So it's going to be another Gamebryo game. It's going to be full of the same jank. And they said, no. This is an all new engine, guys. We're developing this in-house. Well, within a couple of weeks of it coming out, people had dug into it and found the same damn game code. So, I mean, we're 23 years ahead, and they're still using the same game engine from... I mean, imagine if id Software, which ironically is now owned by Bethesda, was continuing to release Doom games that were still built on the Wolfenstein 3D engine. That's kind of where we're at. 16 times the detail, yeah. A modder has added functional ladders to Fallout 4. Well, that's good to know. I'll have to look that up. But the point of all this, I had a reason for saying this.
I like how they can have $100 million spent on a company and thousands of on a game, and hundreds of people working on it for a couple of years, and they can't manage something. But one bored nerd with too much time on his hands knocks it out in an afternoon.
Yeah, in a weekend release is a working, or when they're like, oh, there's just so much content, we could never get all the quests in, and people are like, yeah, actually, if you just go into these ini files and take these comments out, these quests now work. What was your problem? But the reason I bring this up, the reason I mention the ladders, is because specifically in the rolling demo, like you couldn't play it, but they showed it on the screen at some convention or something for Starfield. Literally, one of the first things you see is a guy in a spacesuit climbing up a ladder. It's like fully visible. So if it's not a cutscene, those crazy bastards as Bethesda might have cracked the how to show a person climbing. At long last, we have climbable ladders in a Bethesda game.
Well, they must have the same problem with steps as well, too, because you see that quite often where, like I said, the same as the ladders, the person's making the stepping motion, but the feet aren't actually striking the steps where they are.
Yeah, you'll see them like take a step and then glide up and forward, and then they take another step and glide up and forward.
Well, it's more that they're taking the steps, but it's not striking where the step is. It's striking something invisible within the step or outside the step. So I think I think their model must have like just a slope, and then the steps are just cosmetic on top, invisible cosmetic on top, and so the slope is probably the average of that kind of jigsaw, or Z, whatever you call it, line, and they're walking up that slope rather than walking up steps, so to speak. I think probably the ladder is the same sort of problem. That ladder, here is vertical object that allows you to move vertically, but each rung isn't modeled separately because they just sort of went, oh, it's not worth it. Yeah, we use the processing power to make the guns look better.
And they taunt you in a few places in the various Gamebryo engine games, because there's places where you can go, like billboards, wrecked billboards in Fallout 3 and 4. Because you know how a billboard is. There's an access ladder for you to get up, and well, they're twisted and broken off, and there's never any scenery around that would allow you to climb onto them and continue climbing up. So it's like, screw you, we're not letting you climb ladders. We told you guys.
You can't do a chin-up.
Yeah, no chin-ups. We gave you powered armor, man-portable nukes, magic spells, the ability to suck the souls out of dragons. But ladders are off limits, gamers. So, yeah. But that's the Starfield thing. I just like, congratulations for you guys. You get to do
if it happens.
If it happens. Well, I mean, Bethesda's one of those companies. They have like more money than sense, so I think they'll throw money at it until it happens. They're like the Joker in the Batman movie. We make art until somebody dies. We code, we code until somebody releases a game. Somebody in marketing says we need to release a game, and then it goes out the door.
Well, if you're talking about the Joker, I just remember his line, "Do I look like a man with a plan?"
Yeah, I was thinking more Nicholson explaining to Vicky Vale there in the first Batman movie. I am the world's first fully functional homicidal artist. I make art until somebody dies. Which you could argue, even though it's not said, that Heath Ledger's Joker kind of had the same approach,
Kind of.
The infamous magic trick. I'm thinking of that. No, come here. Hey, it's disappeared.
Yeah, my son liked that. I showed him the Batman movies recently. He's 11 years old, so he thought the only scary part was when Scarecrow gets the hallucinatory gas himself, and sees Batman as a demon sort of thing. And he thought that was probably the scariest part. Though he didn't like the gruesomeness of like half the face missing.
Yeah. Now you haven't shown him Joker, have you?
No.
Okay. Yeah, that's a little. Yeah. yeah. I just I just did warn him that. When Heath Ledger's Joker was starting to tell a story of, how I got these scars, I said, I just stopped it there and I said, he's going to tell this story, but he tells a couple of other stories in it. So don't get disturbed by the story because he's made it up. It's bullshit. He'll tell some other stories. But I thought the best response was at the end when Batman said, no, I know how you get these ones. I think we should do 10 minutes as Batman. What do you think? Kyle, we sent you. Perhaps we shouldn't. Perhaps not.
My son said, why does he do that voice when he's Batman? And I said, because it's scarier.
It's a very old series of videos, but he might get a kick out of it. Have you ever seen the Bat Dad videos?
No.
He he's just a dad, but he wears like a Batman mask, and he'll have his phone up, and he'll, like, his kids are goofing off in the back car, and he's like, Timmy, take your feet off the back of Dad's seat. Are you bothering your sister?
Yeah, well, that's what I said to my son. I said, because it's scarier. I said, how would you like it if I said, come to dinner?
How do you react to that?
Oh, yeah, okay, I get it now, Papa.
All right.
Have you done your homework?
The Bad Dad videos first came out when my girls were 5 and 10 each.
Grab him by the scruff of the shirt. Get dressed for school.
Yeah, that's exactly it. They were not impressed or amused by me trying to do Bat Dad. Charlotte, help your sister find her shoes. Dad. Sorry. They just shut me down. Metatron says Michael Keaton remains the best Batman on film.
No, that's just crazy talk.
Keaton's Batman was good. Kyle's not saying anything in response to that.
As long as nobody comes up and says George Clooney.
Fair enough. I think we can agree that was an error. What did you think of Val Kilmer's Batman? Be honest.
Look, to me, there's only two Batmans. On the comical side, there's Adam West, and then on the serious side, there's Christian Bale. Because what I liked too about Nolan's Batman movies was that there was a beginning, a middle, and an end. There wasn't, well, we'll keep this going with an option for a 12th movie, and it wasn't stretched out to the heat death of the universe. It was like he had come to clean up Gotham City, or to put it in a position where somebody else could come and clean it up. It could clean itself up. And it's like, I'm not needed anymore. Time for me to piss off to the French Riviera or wherever it was, and sit there with a hot chick having a coffee and lunch, and and just retire for the rest, relax for the rest of my life. My job is done. I like that. I like stories with a beginning, a middle, and an end. This endless reboots or shows that don't know when to stop, like your Seinfeld or Star Trek Next Generation or something. I don't like that. Just do it, end it, and then come up with a new story.
I agree with you. My only problem is when you stop the franchise at 3 movies or 4 movies or 5. Look, because their asses are they're not on the ropes, but they know that they're starting to have to back up towards them. Somebody at Disney is going to get desperate enough to go, Iron Man reboot. Iron Man, we will just restart Iron Man. People loved Iron Man. It was the best part of the MCU. We'll just redo Iron Man. And we'll have to watch Tony Stark get captured by bad guys, build his armor in desperate conditions, fight somebody trying to steal his armor, and then come out and proclaim, I am Iron Man. And then we get...
But this time, Iron Man will be a midget for inclusiveness. It'll be a 3-foot tall Iron Man.
And then but he'll build a full-sized Iron Man suit. So
like Master Blaster.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get Peter Dinklage. What's Peter Dinklage up to? We'll get Peter Dinklage is Iron Man. And I shouldn't say it because Peter Dinklage is actually an awesome actor. And I think he acts beyond the range of just being like, we need a short guy. He's actually a talented actor. Metatron passed me the bat shark repellent. Yeah, the 60s tongue in cheek. Let's face it, if you're Gen X or right around there, it's ridiculous as the bat tootsie, bat cookies and milk, Frank Gorshin's Riddler.
And all the cameos, whenever they were climbing up the side of an apartment building, and they'd have the cameos of actors poking their heads out the window.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, Frank Sinatra. was one of the people. I mean, imagine today saying, "Yeah, hey Harrison Ford, we got this kind of campy, fun action show on TV. We want you to stick your head out of a window and be in it." You know, I just don't think that would happen. But one day the Batmobile wouldn't start. Batman tells Robin to check the battery, and Robin says, "What's a Terry?" Oh wait, no, that's on Discord. Discord now has a sound library, so you can play musical drums themes. Gomez Adams was the best part of Batman. Anyway,
yeah. So I think like that's the sort of the two ways that you can go with any particular story. You know, off in the direction of cheese, and then off in the direction of serious. I'm happy with either.
yeah.
At the game table, it usually has to go fairly cheesy because that's gamers, you know. But in movies and books and stuff, it can go in either direction, and I'm happy with either. If you try to mix them, it doesn't work so well, you know.
Yeah.
Commando, the drama, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger's Commando, the drama, it like,
no.
You know, it doesn't work. You know, you go full on with it. Yeah, I think that's the best way. And I think a lot of the other movies, they either tried cheesy, but it didn't really work. Like George Clooney and that, they tried cheesy. It just didn't work. Or they thought they were being serious, and it was just stupid. I thought, like Ben Affleck trying to be serious was just...
Yeah.
You know, and then like the Batman versus Superman thing, like, you know, they're all broody and staring at each other, and here's Batman getting his shirt off again and everything. That's like, okay, look, just go get a room, guys. We know how you feel about each other. You know, it was just stupid.
And well, that goes back to the you know, with Batman, it's like you do 3 movies, but you know the studio wants more money. So if you're saying, okay, we've told our Batman story arc, we're not coming back to this. You know, Bruce's parents have got to die.
Be creative. Come up with a new character, a new story. Try creativity.
I'm with you. Be creative and come up with something new.
Millions of dungeon masters do it every day around game tables. Why can these dickheads not do it with hundreds of millions of dollars at their disposal and everyone desperate for work for them? There's all these script writers out there going around peddling their little manuscripts. You know, they've got their little piles of paper going, "Oh, please, sir, please take a look at this," and they're all desperate for somebody. There's, you know, even if there's 1,000 of them, 1 in 1,000 will be something decent. You know, give them a go. Try something new.
I'm not making excuses for anybody, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. But whether you saw it or not, I don't know. But I'm sure you heard about that rancid Scooby-Doo reboot that Mindy Kaling did a few months ago, right? Velma.
Yeah.
Okay. The story goes, and I haven't heard this confirmed or anything by anyone, but the story goes that she pitched it as just a dark animated comedy, and the studio Warner Brothers leaned back on her and said, no, it's got to be a recognizable property. We're not going to make just some ridiculous slice of life sitcom cartoon. It's got to be a recognizable property. And they settled on Scooby-Doo because they felt it was safe. So, again, I'm not letting her off the hook for creating something that was ultimately garbage, but a lot of it, I think, is studios. Like, somebody might come to them with like, "Hey, I've got an idea about a superhero, but he's totally new, right? It's not Marvel. It's not."
Yeah. I get that. So Metatron Shadow says new is synonymous with risky to film producers, and I get that. But it's, as I've said before on this show, if you as a studio have $200 million to spend, you can make one $200 million movie, or you can make 100 $2 million movies. Amongst those 100 $2 million movies, you are going to have a couple that are really successful and make you as much money as that bland reboot $200 million. I get that you don't want to take risks with $200 million. But if you make 100 different movies, one of them will be successful. I mean, and this is essentially what Netflix is doing these days. Netflix in general is not doing those big shows. They're leaving that to HBO. They're doing stacks of small shows in lots of different countries. So we get these Korean shows or Spanish shows or whatever that become dramas that the whole world is, or dramas or comedies or whatever, that the whole world is watching, and they're quite successful. They also produce a whole stack of crap that nobody's interested in, but they have a few really successful ones. So that's the other approach, and that's the way that you get a lot of creativity and new ideas happening. And you end up in the same financial position as you would if you just did this safe reboot of this, big show. I think really it's a hangover from the old cinema days where they'd have this whole, they had that whole cycle where they'd pitch the movie, they'd do the pre-production, they'd make the movie, they'd do the post-production, they'd start doing the marketing and promotion, they'd choose which time of year to release the movie in, there'd be the big release in the cinemas, and so on, and the box office receipts and all the rest, and there'd be the book tie-in and all the rest. There was that whole cycle that they'd do over a couple of years for a particular movie, and it became a competition of doing each one bigger and better than they did before. Like Terminator 2 was much bigger than Terminator 1 and Terminator 3 and so on. I think they're wrapped into that, but it's very different in today's internet age where, it's trivial. You can go on the internet now on YouTube and you can find half a dozen channels that produce, there's some fan films and there's some original productions and so on. Like if you like sci-fi, there's the Dust channel. And they produce things which are pretty good shows. And they're producing them relatively cheaply for literally a few $1,000s in some cases. Or a few $100,000 at most. And if you gave them tens of millions of dollars, it wouldn't necessarily be better. The visual effects and the sound would be better, but the basic plot and the acting and so on would not be any better. So I think the studios, just because you're a big studio doesn't mean you have to make just big movies. You can make lots of little stuff. As I said, that's what the approach that Netflix has taken. And they've come up with a lot more creative and interesting stuff. But I think some of the big studios are just, it's like, politicians, they want to cut the ribbon on a $600 billion tunnel rather than on, a few miles of walking tracks or something. They want that one big project to cut a ribbon on. It boosts their ego more than having lots of little projects, even though the lots of little projects might actually have a better effect on, on urban movement or whatever. I think it's the same kind of thinking that the studios have. You want your name attached to this big movie. You don't want your name attached to 100 small movies.
Yeah, I mean, let me ask you something, little bit of trivia, because I've seen this coming up a lot today on my various feeds. It's like hashtag Alien Day or, hashtag Nostromo, stuff like that. What do you think the budget for Aliens was, Kyle?
I don't know. It was probably less than $1 million.
For Aliens, plural?
Oh, Aliens. I don't know.
Aliens.
Probably less than 10 million.
You're not that far off. 18 million. 18 million. The soda machine that they made the hypersleep beds out of, they could afford 2 of those. But they needed it to look like there was an entire ship full. You know what they did? They used a mirror. They used an infinity mirror effect to make it look like there was an entire rank of these things on the ship. Stuff like that. They made arguably one of the most memorable science fiction action films ever for less than $20 million. The movie made $158 million in the theaters, which that is $48 million today and about a $500 million return. Can you imagine going to a theater exec, or rather a movie exec, and saying, I have this idea. There was a movie that came out like 8 years ago that was this kind of a cerebral, visceral body horror movie. I want to make a sequel to it that is all action with tons of practical props that, like me, this guy named Stan, and 20 insane prop masters will build. I'm going to need about $20 million. They'd laugh you out. They'd say, that's not like, there are YouTubers who have a $20 million budget. Get out of here. You're just trying to waste our time and money, you know?
Author Trace Richard says, have you seen The Last of Us? And if so, what did you think of it? Yes, I have seen it. So I've played both the computer games, Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2. I think they're great games. I watched the series. I had some anticipation. I liked it, but I wasn't blown away by it. I'm still trying to figure out how much of my not being blown away is the fault of the show itself and how much it is just that I'd played the games first. Because having played the games first, it had two things. One is I knew the plot, right? And if you know the plot, I mean, that's why we have spoiler tags and all the rest. If you know the plot, it takes away from the enjoyment of a show. And it also means you have certain expectations. And there are things that work in a game that don't work in a movie or work in a book or a role-playing game, and vice versa. So there are always going to be changes. I understand that. So I wasn't thrilled with all the changes, but that didn't bother me too much. It was just overall how engaging it was. I didn't find it as engaging as the games. So I think there's two reasons for that. One is that, as I said, I knew the plot. And the second reason is the game gives you an illusion of agency. The game doesn't really give you agency the way even, say, Fallout 4 or whatever did, where what you do determines the ending. Because in Fallout 4, you can basically choose which faction is going to end up ruling the Commonwealth by your actions. You don't get that kind of choice in Last of Us Part 1 or 2. There's a particular story that you're going to play. You just do some fights that unlock the next cutscene. And the only alternative is either you die and you stop playing, or you keep playing. You go and play it again and win the fight and then go on. What you do doesn't affect the outcome. But because you do all those fights, you have the illusion of agency in playing this game. And so you are necessarily more engaged when you're going through the story of Last of Us Parts 1 and 2 on the computer game. You're not going to be as engaged in a movie unless you're, in this big theater, you don't know the plot and you've got surround sound and all the rest. Just watching it on a TV screen isn't going to be quite the same. So I thought it was good, but not great. But I think my failure to give it a great rating is more to do with that previous computer game experience. So I think I would look at it rather differently if the games had never existed or I'd never played them or something.
Mm. And I think that's an expectation that I think a lot of people don't understand when they say, I would love to have that. Like, back in the early 2000s, there was I still love the game. I didn't just love it back then, but back in the early 2000s when Half-Life 2 came out. Now, I played Half-Life, Blue Shift, Opposing Force, loved them all. The sequel, Half-Life 2, was on a completely different level graphically and at the time in terms of world interactivity, physics, things like that. And at the time, I thought, my God, this would make an amazing movie or even better, a TV show. But would it? Would it really? Sometimes I'm not sure if people if people really understand what they're asking for when they say, "Oh, I want a movie of this," or "I want a TV show of this,"
Mm-hmm.
Half-Life is kind of the same way. You feel like you had the agency, but periodically the G-Man, the mysterious G-Man, shows up in the Half-Life games and literally breaks the fourth wall and subtly breaks the fourth wall to tell Gordon, aka the player, just how little agency they have, just how little choice they have in matters, that they are acting on behalf of powers that they don't understand. So I take your point there about Last of Us, and I agree with it, Kyle.
Yeah. So, but as I said, that's just a thing generally, because what makes a good game doesn't necessarily make a good movie or book. I've never had the urge to write up a novel of any of my role-playing game sessions, because I know it would be shit. Because the role-playing game experience is good because you have agency. You get to choose what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in a novel, you just read through somebody else's choices. So it has to be structured differently. That their choices have to be interesting and in detail, and there's got to be a background to it and a reason for it, rather than just, oh yeah, let's go through the left dungeon door and and some things that some things that are just stupid and you laugh at the game table. You don't care. You roll up another character or whatever. If it was in a novel or movie, or like what? They just killed that guy?
Yeah, that's like, I thought these guys were the heroes. Why did they kill everyone in the tavern? I don't understand. This is completely nonsensical. This doesn't this guy who's supposed to be a holy knight stabbed the bartender to death. I don't understand, So yeah, trust me, probably you don't want movies or TV shows of your favorite video game or tabletop RPG products. So yeah. If I get Chat GPT to write up a script based on some of the titles we've seen in the chat stream, if you do, just let us know. People were talking about was it the Garfield versus somebody was saying Bubba Hotep versus Ren and Stimpy, Beavis and Butthead visit South Park. If you get that working, let us know. Metatron says, are we going to play Kyle's game at some point? That is up to Kyle.
Well, no, really. It is up to potential players. If we get enough potential players, then we will. So hit us up in the Discord.
Yes, and if you're not on the Discord, hang on a second. If you're not on the Discord, I will throw out an invite real quick. Attention, future people, this invite will not work in the future. So if you're watching this a month from now, or even as little as a week from now, don't think, I'll go get on their Discord and bother them. It won't work. That's not a security feature. That's a bug. Because no matter how many times I say, make that permanent, it doesn't. So if you want to join us on Discord, there's the Discord. And if you want to play in Conflict, Kyle's excellent combat adventure RPG, then you got to come and hit us up on the Discord.
It doesn't have dice mechanics like the End of the World. It does. It just roll 2d6, add a number to TD6, and tell us the number, and we'll tell us if you succeeded or failed.
Well, I think on that note, Kyle, unless you have anything pressing, we'll probably wrap. But I do want to ask you, are you going to run some Conflict at the Guac?
Yeah, sure. Again, if we get interest, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, once again, I will, if I can find it real quick here. If you are interested in playing a most excellent tabletop RPG convention in the virtual sense, check this URL out. Go over to Warhorn.net. Well, the URL's there. I'm not going to read the whole thing out to you. You guys are perfectly capable. If you weren't, you wouldn't have made it this far. But check it out. That'll lead over to the Discord that we have set up for all your audio video gaming rooms, and we've got merch. We've got a whole bunch of fun stuff. So check it out. Sign up to play some Conflict, and Kyle will run some Conflict for you, and we'll have a good time. So do that. I insist that you do. Kyle, any closing thoughts?
The dice are always right.
The dice are always right. A perfect closing thought. So with that, then
bring snacks.
And
bring snacks, and the dice are always right.
Of course, bring snacks. So with that said, guys, we will bid adieu to Kyle. I will be back tomorrow night. We have special guest Paul Stormberg coming on the show, D&D scholar and historian and all-around swell guy, to answer all of our questions about D&D trivia matters and talk to him about some of the great stuff he was doing at GaryCon. And then Friday night, we'll be back with some more Dark Tower on the first half of the show. And then on the back half, we'll be playing some Gamma World. So until then, everyone, Kyle, I'll see you around. And the rest of you guys, be good and take care of yourselves. I might have a short video coming tonight just to kind of update about the situation with Wizards of the Coast and the Pinkertons. But until then, take care, everyone. I love you all. Have a nice evening.
Have you seen my owl bear? Here's to all the weirdos everywhere in the woods and in the air. Have you seen my owl bear? Should I shave off all my hair? Bobs are all around. Some live in tunnels underground. Some are fat, some are rich, some are sleeping in a ditch. Can you ride a crooked horse without a saddle way off course? Make it as a toad all the way to Smoky Joe's. Have you seen the little creep driving fast in his little green Jeep? He smells like fish and brandy, but his rotten teeth look dandy. Take me to the show, I don't care if fast or slow. From action flicks to dancing dicks, just take me to the show.